Howdy.
Hello.
Hey,
Hola.
Oh, it's Jeremy.
It is
How's that new human doing?
pretty good. Pretty good. Almost 2 months old. Getting there.
Are you back in the office?
I am.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does the Seattle Google office suck so bad that they've got that? Look at your ceiling. I feel like you're in high school or something. Damn.
No, it's actually like a really nice version of the drop ceiling with extra soundproofing.
Nice.
What's wrong with it? I got the exact same one right here. Like, not everyone's lucky to have the same fake background as you do.
That's real, dude.
I don't believe it. No, this is just AI.
Nope. That's real.
Damn, AI's gotten good. Now you can move on your green screen and it's all like doing a fake dog. Wow.
Actually, all of me is fake, right? Is AI except for the mustache. Like the mustache is actually real.
The mustache is alive.
The AI just generates everything behind it.
Nick is actually 3 kids in a trench coat.
It's fair.
You know, there's those real thing of like men pretending to be women on TikTok and having all those like influencer TikToks with filters. That was a thing.
People pretending to be something they're not on the internet has been a thing for as long as the internet has existed. So I'm not surprised.
Actually, you're controlled by the dog right behind you. You're just the puppet of the dog. The
Yeah,
dog's
you all thought it was dolphins and mice, but it's actually dogs.
Yep.
Golden retrievers, to be more specific.
All right. On that note, we're 3 minutes after. I'm going to kick us off. So welcome to the Tuesday, December 10th SIG Multicluster meeting. Arthur, it looks like you are first.
hey, yeah, so I have like 2 changes that would need to be reviewed. The first one is the labels and annotation export that we have been discussed for a while. But the thing is, Cilium feature freeze was last Friday and I wanted to be in that release. I can probably still make it if this gets merged like in the next few days, like today or tomorrow, depending on your time zone, probably. So please review this. I think Mike Morris already told me that he's going to review it, but if anyone wants to... Yeah.
I'm finally prioritizing this and plan to read through and hopefully give an LGTM today. I think it's already been approved. It just needs a final LGTM.
Yep.
And I can do the same today or tonight.
Yeah, and there is also the related PR to update, like the CRD, that needs an approval. There was already Thomas reviewing it. I just fixed on it, so it's look good to me. It was removed, but if you check the diff, the one that can approve possibly can also look good to me, since it's already in its fix. And on another note, there was the V1 Alpha 2 change. So this is less urgent because I need to also update coordinates to support it, because if not, it breaks our end-to-end test and stuff like that. So for now, it's only V1 Alpha 1 stored, V1 Alpha 2 served, but not stored. Well, there can only be one stored, but yeah. And then I should update the coordinates plugin. Hopefully, the coordinates maintainer will be able to review it soonish. It's soon the winter break, so I don't know. Let's see. And then we should be able to kick V1 Alpha 2 if we want to go forward with that. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know if you have comment on V1 Alpha 2.
Thank you so much, Arthur, for picking this up. I know it's been something that I kind of got the ball rolling on, but then had a bit of a lapse and haven't been able to follow through on it. So I really appreciate you picking this up to carry it through.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. And yeah, hopefully we can get this in time for Cilium.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Coordinates version.
Yeah, the Coordinates probably not, but
because we do rely on the Coordinates plugin too, so we need both things to be aligned. The thing is, maybe we can get past feature freeze a bit because it's, I mean, if it's the release soon, but it allows us to not have a bump of version in the next version, maybe they will say, let's go for it, but I don't know. We need to check. And that's about it. I think someone added also another PF that to be reviewed. We'll let him talk about that, but I don't know who it is. About the multi-cluster site.
Oh, that was me. Hey. Yeah, last meeting I asked about new contributors, just finding ways to start, and it was mentioned just changes to the site were sorely needed. So I just started with the homepage just to do something, just to get started, and then it looks like in the reference section, like the import page is blank, so that seems like maybe a good place to move on to. There are a few other pages that are just empty.
yes. Yeah, this is a great way to get started. Thank you. We'll review those as well. No, definitely appreciate site PRs.
Cool. Sounds good.
Cool. I fixed the agenda to attach your name, Brian, to that.
There's a lot more we could add to the site, so definitely appreciate
Yes.
the contributions here.
Yeah, I just figured I'd start somewhere and then get
Perfect. Yeah.
deeper as I
It's
need
great.
to read the caps so I can write better.
Just out of curiosity, where are you coming from? Are you working for an implementation of one of these APIs or for an end user?
No, I'm a principal at ThoughtWorks, so I work with a lot of clients who are end users. And then I occasionally contribute to SIG Network, but networking is hard, so I'm finding another SIG to potentially contribute to.
Yeah. Come help us
Nice.
with multi-cluster orchestration.
Glad to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Lots to do. Cool. All right. I think Corentin, you're next.
Right. This is something I've been talking to a few people, but trying to get the definition of management cluster a little bit defined, at least so we would be talking about the same thing and maybe using the same term. I have a draft linked in the meeting notes if you want to look. I'm making this not a cap, but a SIG position, I think it's called, or something the same way sameness was defined. And the definition is voluntarily broad. I saw that everyone was doing kind of their own thing. Is like I think in Azure it's called Hub Cluster. Where for Google, I think we've been doing management cluster, and there's also admin cluster also for also other Google things. This config cluster sometimes it's not named but used, like in the case of Argo CD. So I figured we could put a name on it. Whatever that is, I don't really care, but pick one. Like the definition of like how many there can be. I'm saying multiple, and how they manage and what permission they should have, and how they should behave a little bit. Can they be part of the workload or not? It's very generic for now, but at least I think that could help us just talk about the same thing in terms of concept.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I mean, clearly this is a pattern. I think when we started MCS, we had talked a lot about the hope of introducing multi-cluster leader election, which I still have the hope of. It would be great. Ideally, so that we wouldn't need special clusters, because that makes things hard to reason about. But I think the reality is it makes life easy to have a few special clusters, and at any kind of reasonable scale, the overhead is probably worth the savings. We still probably do want some kind of leader election. If you have a special cluster in the US running your deployments in Europe, that's not ideal. Yeah. And the ability to kind of globally distribute, especially like lower volume controllers seems good.
And jumping in before I give you the hand, Mike, sorry. And I call out the leader election. I think the management cluster could be part of the workloads. I mean, some of the workload cluster can be designated as management because we need some special permission to run that control point to have some authority over the others or some central authority. So maybe not all the cluster would be leader elected, maybe some of them, but they could be designated at least as participating, and having that hybrid hat of running workload and being an authority. Or some of them separated. I think the CD is often like that. You would kind of separate it. But yeah, I think that's definitely a good case. And leader election, if we could get some libraries for that, that'd be awesome. But yeah, Mike, it's all yours. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was basically just going to reiterate your existing points of like, even like beyond any sort of like small scale leader election of more than like 5 to 7 clusters isn't really practical. So I think a management cluster of some sort, even if it's a like distributed designated one of these clusters in each geo or something like that, participates in leader election between the 3 of them or something, or 5 of them or whatever, that it feels reasonable to, yeah, kind of like clarify this like idea of some class of clusters have a particular special role that is something other than the vast majority of the other ones. And for small clusters, you may have like a Venn diagram where the overlap is 100%. But I think not for most clusters of any kind of appreciable size.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I can't tell who was first, Mike or Jack. So I'll go with Mike because you were first on my screen.
All right. I think actually Jack made it, got his hand up first. But anyway, so I'll just point out in Kubestellar, we work with a little more broken up concepts. So I think Mike also, Morris picked up on the idea, right? Yeah, I think we shouldn't have a monolithic idea. There are several separable concepts involved. And so, for example, in the Kubestellar architecture, we work with this concept of spaces, which is something that basically has the behavior of Kube API servers and the generic controllers. And we have multiple different kinds of spaces. So it's the idea of management is not one monolithic cluster. So I just want to keep that option or idea open.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jack?
Yes, cool. Thanks for doing this, Quarantine. I just wanted to maybe speak to the part I've been kind of reading the documentation in real time here, and the part of it that sort of hedges whether or not the management cluster is actually going to be responsible for managing a cluster. So there are aspects of the document that speak to the management cluster being responsible for distributing features and apps across a multi-cluster environment, but there are also references to it being a sort of centralized control plane for lots of clusters, which implies the management. So my hat is I earned my hat from Cluster API and SIG Cluster Lifecycle, where this is a sort of well-known term that refers very explicitly to a Kubernetes cluster whose role is to manage other Kubernetes clusters, and like the sort of canonical gesture there would be cluster upgrade. So you do a rolling cluster upgrade across your fleet of clusters. And I feel like there's some overlap here in this document. But because that's just a subset and because it's an important thing, it makes me wonder if a term like hub, or I don't want to say proxy, but a lot of the sort of like behavioral qualities that various multi-cluster scenarios are going to ask of this management cluster thing is proxy-like behavior. Sort of like you're a scheduler that represents scheduling across. This is maybe hypothetical because we don't have like mature solutions for this, but imagine a management cluster-like thing is responsible primarily for being a centralized scheduler that distributes workloads across. And so its primary job is to sort of act on behalf of the destination workload cluster schedulers as a like. So I think maybe I'm just posing a conversation, but do we feel comfortable having a different definition of management cluster than SIG Cluster Lifecycle? I don't think that there's any rule that says we can't do that, but might want to reference that if it becomes more complicated.
Could you link? I'm not aware of that definition actually. Could you link it somewhere?
Okay, cool.
in the
I don't know that
comment?
they have a nice like dictionary doc like you've put up here, but I'll definitely is this in a PR? I see it's in a branch. I could just add a comment on
shit! It's
that.
not a. Yeah, sorry. Let me. I was planning on opening it as a PR, so I just need to click to open it as a PR. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll track the
Okay.
branch and I'll link. There's probably a bunch of docs that I'll link to that give some supporting evidence to what I'm saying. I think it's
Awesome.
great to define this so clearly. So,
yeah, I don't want to duplicate from the others. I'm not aware of those. That said, for the proxy and hub, just to respond to that, I think it's not always something like the entry point for the user, right? It's sometimes you could imagine maybe some for policy enforcement or whatnot, security.
Yeah.
Could that maybe as a centralized point, so it's necessarily a proxy for things there. But it's just
Yeah, no,
it's hard to find
a lot of use cases. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Brian, go for it.
Yeah, it's not so much a new point, just adding to what Jack was saying. It reminded, like what you were saying reminded me a lot of what Karmada has done in their implementation. It's like the centralized scheduler for managing distribution of deployments to the downstream schedulers. It's like you're not actually creating a scheduler on a downstream cluster, right? You're just essentially creating I would like a deployment on your cluster, and then you handle it from there. But it's kind of sounded like you were describing that like very similarly in a way. So it just reminded me of how their implementation works. I have not read all of our KEPs, so I'm not sure how aligned they are, but it's what it sounded like to me.
And maybe one important point that I'm trying to make is that among the set of solutions that fit under the charter of SIG Multicluster, there's going to be a management cluster-like thing that's going to exist in a lot of solutions, even though in thing 1 versus thing 2 versus thing 3, they're playing slightly different roles. So the point is it worthwhile defining that thing that's going to wear different hats? Is it worth having a single definition for that, or is your definition of a management cluster that you started here, is that actually really addressing one of many possible use cases that SIG Multicluster might sponsor in the future?
I mean, could we actually just try to enumerate them? Like, I think one thing that's clear is we don't have a good grammar to talk about these things. And your point, Jack, is very valid. Like, they're not all identical. They're not all the same. So having a term is probably not the best thing either. But the fact that there's this variation probably emphasizes that we need a way to describe them so that we can figure out which one people are talking about. Because yeah, we'll talk about config clusters. We talk about, we've used the term golden cluster. We've like all of these things. It could be a separate cluster. The current write-up suggests it should be a separate cluster. Sometimes it's just one cluster out of your clusters that happens to run the stuff that does the multi-cluster orchestration. But we don't have it would be great if we could come up with a good way to talk about what we're talking about. Nick?
I mean, to that end, it's kind of, I saw Laura threw my name up on the agenda here, so, but it kind of aligns with this topic. It's kind of trying to solve for, discover actually what those users are or what those use cases are. I think that we walked away from like the SIG multi-cluster dinner that we had in Utah saying like, hey, we need to actually talk to end users a little bit more and figure out what kinds of use cases they want to build for. So it's not just like Azure and Google and big companies saying we are going to build these things on this thing for customers, as much as let's just talk to customers and see what problems they're trying to solve and try to service them up into this SIG.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Nick says. We want to get more use cases, but from what we can see currently in the community, there are like dozens of projects, not just in SIG. Some of them are in CNCF, some of them just on their own. They pretty much all have this concept of a centralized control plane cluster. We never had a good name for it. In our current KEP, we name it hub cluster, but it's just a name. And while like currently you are on it, we also don't have a good naming for the leaf cluster, managed cluster, member cluster, workload cluster, either. So when we give talk, I always slash say whatever name resonate with your with your terminology. So while we at it, we probably could unify that terminology too, so that at least we know what we're talking about when we have the next talk.
I think that's, yeah, that's a good segue, although happy to kind of keep this conversation going into the item from Laura. But Nick, you're on it. It is the last meeting of January. Nick, I don't know, you're on this. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I may be on it, but it was, something we all discussed again in Utah. Jeremy was too busy, rearing children and whatnot to attend, which is totally respectable. But the idea is to like spend a little bit more time talking to end users about their multi-cluster problems, to discover how we might need to morph the API and morph any improvements that we can make on cluster inventory, cluster profile. To that end, I'll spearhead it. Happy for anybody to help me, but I'll try to create like a doc of questions maybe that we want to ask particular users should we get them. And then I think it's on all of us to go out and find and bring some end users to these meetings. Or what we also talked about was setting up like very specific end user meetings that are separate from these, that are more friendly, because apparently it's scary to come in here with all of your big brains. So
I actually kind of like the idea of maybe doing, and I'll throw out quarterly, we should talk about it, but end user meetings where we try to do some outreach and get people show up.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, especially for all of us that work on behalf of implementations that theoretically have users. Going out and trying to bring some of our folks to venues like this. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Right.
Cool.
Mike,
That was really it. That's the whole bullet.
Awesome. Do we want to continue discussing the proposal, the naming proposal right now, or is this a better kind of offline comment on the PR, add thoughts, add different types of management clusters we can think of?
I'm opening the PR right now, so let's talk about it maybe offline. That way, Let's go at it. Maybe we'll get more there, and we can bring it back in 2 weeks.
Beautiful.
There was one line too for what Ryan shared in the chat. I don't know if it was discussed 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you jumped on purpose or just missed it. What would be the conditions in cluster profile? And there's that doc from Ryan. I just wanted to bring it up. I don't know if everyone saw it. There was some I had a comment around the conditions that look like metrics, and I don't know if we could plug maybe a metric endpoint instead of hard coding values in cluster profile. The update is going to be very annoying, I think. And the second point was like the integration with the about API. I think if we could have a blanket statement that the condition coming from about API would be replicated in cluster profile, that'd be good. Though we need to look again as well into their frequency of update, their refresh rates, and see what guarantees we want to ask the cluster manager to follow. So yeah, just wanted to get that doc, like get some visibility to that doc if it was missed in Slack.
Yeah, so I'm just pasting. Thank you, Corentin. I'm pasting that doc link again here. The reason I didn't bring that, I think it's not ready for discussion. I just want to, as Corentin said, just to mention that so that everybody can. I already see a few comments there, which are good. To clarify, one thing is this is actually the properties on About API, not on the Cluster API yet. And the purpose is to copy it directly from About API to the Cluster API for those. There are a few things other than what Corentin and I think Stefan also mentioned. Several people have probably mentioned is the dynamic side of this property. We can definitely discuss what's the best approach. And another thing is the format, because the property both about API and the cluster profile were kept as generic as possible. Basically, it was a string. So anything that is not really just a string, it's getting a little bit difficult, even just an array. So whether we can decide whether like make it a JSON or something instead, it's a string, but we have some kind of internal format is another thing we probably could discuss. Yeah, so basically, this is the doc. Hopefully, more people can comment and we can discuss on that doc before we can get that into a more of a formal part of the CAP. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I do think the doc is a good place to discuss. One thing, kind of as a rule, we talked about a while ago with the cluster properties was not creating any standards around heavily dynamic resources because they don't scale very well. It is an open API, right? So you could always you could track a metric in there if you wanted to, but I don't think it's something we'd want to encourage. Like more static cluster shape things are good. The things that change occasionally are probably good, but anything that's likely to change at all frequently at scale, like you can just kind of not just the amount of updates, which an API server can actually handle a fair amount, but think of who all might want to watch that resource and how many, like what kind of watch amplification you could get from that. But yeah, let's talk on the doc. I think it's a good discussion.
Yeah. Then we need to think about how this is kind of the bigger picture. Again, it was some of the properties we were thinking about. It's really serving the scheduling orchestration. Right? So if the dynamic ones cannot be there, how can we solve this problem? That's probably we can. And I agree. I think it's fine that we don't put two dynamic ones there. Then what do we do with all these is something that we probably also want to think about.
Right. Or should there be a roll up at all? Like it's also a reasonable question, I think, for things where they're likely to be stale and we probably have to go check the cluster anyway. Does having a likely stale cache benefit? I don't think we need to answer this right now, but it's the type of question that I'd have before we want to centralize that information.
Yeah. And just on top of that, even that, because we are not like Kubernetes, right? So the whatever that contains cluster doesn't have full control of the again leaf cluster workload clusters. So even if the cache is 100% sync, doesn't matter. Someone else could go to that cluster and do something that we're not like Kubernetes can control the node like that. So that is a problem that we probably cannot solve. We'll see, if that's something that we actually want to solve. Yeah, that's it. That's by the way, according to mention 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later is in 2 weeks is Christmas. Do we still have that meeting?
Yeah, Mike asked that, so I just canceled it because it was a good point. We basically always canceled like the holiday week meeting because nobody shows up. But it was still there. So to remove the ambiguity, I just canceled it right now. And if we want to have an off week meeting, by all means, we should still chat. But having 2 people show up expecting to present something would be bad news. Okay, anything else? I think some of us have some homework in the form of PR and doc reviews. Any other topics for discussion today? Well, all right then. Give a little bit of time back. Thank you all. Thanks for all of the contributions this year. And it sounds like great discussion at KubeCon. Yeah, sorry I wasn't there. I did have a new kid, so it was hard to get down there. But yeah, I just want to. Or what's that, Nick?
Do you live on a block?
Do I live on a block?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your new kid is
new kid on the yeah, new kids on the block. Yeah, got some new kids on the block.
Well, congratulations. Hopefully we'll catch up with you again next time.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to say, since this is since this is our last meeting of the year, I just want to say thanks everyone. This has really been an awesome year for contributions. Lots of things ramping up. It's really exciting to see this all come together. Tons of topics basically every meeting this year. So thanks everyone. Let's keep it up through next year. Yeah, looking forward to all the future collaboration.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Happy New Year for everyone
Congrats,
who I don't
Jeremy.
see before then. All right.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.